God denounces Babylon because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. In 6 days, God made the world, then rested on the seventh, marking it as a sacred rest, distinct and dedicated to Him alone, for His followers to honor across ages. But the man of sin, placing himself above God, declaring himself divine, aimed to change heavenly appointed times and laws. This entity, aiming to showcase supremacy over God, swapped the Sabbath with Sunday. This shift, embraced by many in Protestant circles, is described as fornication in the Bible, Revelation 14:8. Throughout this era, humanity's foe has targeted the Sabbath from the fourth commandment, aiming to erase God's mark, the seventh-day Sabbath, replacing it with a day lacking God's blessing, erasing its memory and sanctity. In the end-time struggle, those estranged from God's laws will confront His faithful, with the Sabbath becoming a central debate, symbolizing God as the world's maker. "Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep," says God, as a symbol of our bond, proving my role as your sanctifier, Exodus 31:13. Attempts to undermine Sabbath observance will arise under the guise of confusion about the true Sabbath, despite clear recognition of Sunday. Anticipating a law-enforcing Sunday worship, we ponder our response. We should seek heavenly strength and mercy. Believing in God's presence, we're not yet at the point of losing our freedoms. The vision included 4 angels at the earth's corners, holding back destructive forces until God's messengers mark His servants, indicating our current task to pray for restraint until the worldwide mission is complete. The Sunday law advances unseen. Its leaders mask the true agenda, leaving many participants unaware of its direction. They unknowingly challenge the freedoms that define their nation, edging towards past oppressions. Even proponents of Sunday laws fail to see the threat to religious freedom and the baseless claims supporting Sunday over the biblical Sabbath. Those pushing for this change underestimate the forthcoming crisis's impact. It's our mission to counteract this looming threat. An immense duty rests on the prayerful across the nation to plead for the dispersal of this dark cloud, granting us more time to serve. Those faithful to God's laws must rouse and seek His unmatched assistance, striving harder to postpone the looming disaster. Let those who honor God's commands not stay quiet now, as if we're passively accepting this challenge. Sitting idly, doing nothing for conscience's freedom, isn't fulfilling God's wishes. Passionate prayers should rise, seeking time for the tasks we've long overlooked. Let's align our actions with these prayers. Many are complacent, virtually snoozing. They think, if prophecy predicts Sunday laws, they'll happen, and resign themselves, finding comfort in believing God will shield His people in crises. Yet, God expects us to act on our responsibilities. As vigilant guardians, you're to spot danger and sound the alarm, guiding others to avoid paths they'd dodge if aware of the truth. We can't aim to please those suppressing freedom of worship, pushing for Sunday observance. Sunday, a counterfeit Sabbath, shouldn't be honored by God's family, nor should we support its advocates, sharing in their sins by electing them. I hope the call against this Sunday law push is clear and strong. We should be actively opposing it now. When our nation forsakes its foundational principles for a Sunday law, it aligns Protestantism with Catholicism. Protestants will back this move, energizing Rome's outdated doctrines, rekindling her repressive rule. Sunday laws are on the horizon. Soon, Sunday enforcement will stir animosity towards God's faithful few. Revelation 13's prophecy of a nation urging worship towards Catholicism will come true with U.S. Sunday laws, recognizing Rome's dominance. Political decay erodes fairness and truth, with leaders for popularity likely to endorse Sunday laws. Satan's spin on events leads many to blame disasters on not observing Sunday, pushing influential figures to enact related laws. They argue that moral decay stems largely from disregarding Sunday, believing its enforcement would better society, a stance gaining traction in America, where the true Sabbath is most preached. Protestantism will reach out to Catholicism, then pushing against God's Sabbath, prompting God's unique intervention. How Catholicism will disclaim idolatry is baffling. And yet, Protestantism is warming up to it, moving towards an alliance not by changing Catholicism, which claims unchanging truth, but by Protestantism's own shift. The Protestant world will join forces with Catholicism, aligning the Church with worldly corruption. Roman Catholicism and apostate Protestantism will similarly oppress those keeping God's commands. When U.S. churches unify over common beliefs to press the state into enforcing their views, American Protestantism will mirror the Roman Church, leading to punitive measures on dissenters. The push by Protestant churches for Sunday observance is essentially endorsing papal worship. By using secular power to mandate religious observance, churches mimic the beast, making Sunday laws in the U.S. akin to worshipping the beast and its image. When Protestantism allies with Catholicism and spiritualism, abandoning its foundational principles for papal doctrines, we're witnessing Satan's influence peak, signaling the end's approach. As we near the final battle, unity among God's people is crucial. Despite worldwide discord, a unified world under papal leadership will challenge heavenly representatives, solidified by apostasy. Sunday law enforcement will signify a departure from democratic foundations towards papal religion, nullifying God's law. Historically, intellectual darkness aided papal dominance. Similarly, an era of enlightenment will prove just as conducive for its success. Current efforts in the U.S. to merge church and state echo papal tactics, paving the way for Catholic dominance in a region once Protestant. Legislators seeking approval will succumb to the push for Sunday laws, fully aligning our nation with papal mandates against God's commands. Just as Roman sieges foretold Jerusalem's fall, this apostasy signals divine patience's limit. We must oppose Sunday reverence, aligning not with God's sanctified day, but with deceit. Upon national apostasy and divine law's dismissal, God will act for his people. The U.S., once blessed, faces judgment upon curtailing religious freedom and embracing Catholicism, marking its guilt in heaven. Legislation enforcing Sunday observance, oppressing Sabbath keepers, will essentially annul God's law in our land, leading to national collapse. National apostasy, siding with satanic policies, signifies full guilt and imminent ruin. Catholic principles, protected by the state, will swiftly bring national downfall. Church-state unity, enforcing a false Sabbath, reflects persecution history, leading to national desolation. America's church-state alliance, mirroring papal tactics, heralds apostasy and doom. History repeats as false worship rises, elevating Sunday, a day without holiness, demanding reverence akin to Babylon's idolatry. America's alliance with Catholicism, coercing Sabbath observance, sets a worldwide precedent. The Sabbath debate will centralize in the ultimate worldwide struggle, engaging all nations. Countries worldwide will mirror the US's lead, facing a similar pivotal moment in all corners of the earth. The final scene unfolds with the universal replacement of God's explicit command with human decree. When this shift to Sunday observance is complete, God's intervention will be unmistakable. This universal elevation of human over heavenly law, placing Sunday above the biblical Sabbath, marks the drama's climax. As this shift reaches worldwide consensus, God will stand up to shake the earth profoundly. The wicked will claim heavenly endorsement, boasting of miracles and divine encounters, asserting a false peace aligned with Sunday law, misleading the world into believing in a misguided utopia. Everywhere on earth, hostility towards true believers will escalate for their refusal to honor Sunday, a mandate of the papacy, challenging their fidelity to God. Human laws will override God's commands, coercing compliance. The argument will be the worldwide Sunday observance, questioning the resistance of the few against national laws. The earthly stage is set for decisive actions, with leaders enacting conscience-controlling laws akin to papal precedents. Babylon's influence will intoxicate all nations with her defiance, pulling them into a unified opposition against freedom of worship. This conflict will engulf the entire Christian community, dividing it into those faithful to God's commands and those aligning with the beast. The Sabbath controversy will polarize Christendom, with a minority's steadfastness against Sunday observance drawing universal scorn. Governmental decrees will expose God's people to danger, prompting them to seek refuge in secluded places, banding together for mutual support. Church members must guard against indignation from restrictions on Sunday activities, responding with prayer and wisdom, not defiance. This is a time for humility, respecting all, including authorities, as advised by 1 Peter 2:17. This guidance is essential for those facing challenging situations. It's important to avoid any actions that could be perceived as defiant or malicious. The approach to work, especially on Sundays, should be handled with wisdom and in a manner that aligns with Christ's teachings. People will naturally inquire about your beliefs regarding Sunday and the Sabbath. These inquiries provide opportunities to share your views, but it should be done discreetly, without drawing undue attention or causing disruption. Choosing not to work on Sunday isn't equivalent to accepting the mark of the beast. In areas where working on Sunday could lead to persecution, it's advisable to use the day for positive missionary efforts instead. If faced with legal demands to cease work on Sundays, the response shouldn't be defiance, as the issue isn't about defying God, but rather about navigating societal norms. Provoking those who hold Sunday in high regard by intentionally working on that day as a display of independence is discouraged. Activities like doing laundry should not be deliberately planned for Sunday to make a point. During times when Sunday observance is enforced, the wisdom from God is to refrain from regular work, dedicating the day to missionary activities instead. This approach helps avoid unnecessary conflicts and accusations of law-breaking without compromising beliefs. Sunday offers a unique opportunity to engage in various forms of ministry, such as outdoor and home meetings, house-to-house outreach, and writing work. Whenever possible, organizing religious services on Sunday can be particularly effective, using the day to make a positive impact and spread the gospel. Utilizing Sundays for outreach and medical missionary work can be a powerful way to connect with the community, offering a meaningful way to spend the day in service to the Lord. As the world and church efforts to nullify God's law intensify, the truth's beauty and strength will become increasingly evident through opposition. This period of enforced Sunday observance is an opportune time to highlight the contrast between the true Sabbath and the counterfeit, bringing attention to the issue at a national level. Believers are faced with a choice between conforming to human traditions or remaining faithful to God's commandments, potentially at the cost of personal freedoms. The commitment to God's law should supersede human mandates when conflicts arise. God's people will respect government authority as divinely instituted, teaching obedience as a duty within its rightful bounds. However, when human laws clash with divine commands, allegiance to God takes precedence. The authority of God's word stands above all human or institutional directives, with the sovereignty of Christ's reign esteemed above earthly powers. Satan tempts humanity with worldly power in exchange for allegiance, leading many to forsake eternal treasures. It's always preferable to endure hardship or lack than to compromise integrity. As Earth's final moments of grace dwindle, turmoil intensifies everywhere, yet divine intervention keeps destructive forces at bay to allow the gospel's final proclamation. Satan's agenda includes nullifying God's law, especially in lands priding themselves on freedom, signaling an end to religious liberty through a conflict centered around Sabbath observance, stirring worldwide debate. A pivotal challenge looms for God's followers as efforts to mandate Sunday observance nationwide emerge, coercing individuals to act against their conscience under legal pressure. The battle for the seventh-day Sabbath will intensify, with legal systems and international powers enacting restrictive laws against those adhering to their faith, showcasing a unified front of spiritualism, Protestantism, and Catholicism against divine principles. Non-compliant individuals facing the national and worldwide push towards a counterfeit Sabbath will endure persecution, not just from Catholicism, but from a Protestant majority society, reflecting the beast's image. God's warning messages will be ignored by many religious groups, leading to an unholy alliance with state power against those faithful to God's commandments, indicating a broad coalition against heavenly truth. This persecution will extend to legal systems, where justice is skewed against those upholding God's commandments, particularly the Sabbath, facing prejudice and legalism favoring human decrees over God's law. In legal confrontations, the stance for God's sovereignty over human laws becomes paramount, advocating not for personal rights, but for heavenly authority. History's adversary continues to target the devout, leveraging societal elites against them, marking them for ridicule and oppression for their steadfastness in faith. Advocacy for biblical truth will eventually brand God's followers as societal dissenters, falsely accused of undermining social order and inviting heavenly wrath due to their Sabbath observance. In these trials, unwavering commitment to God and His Word is crucial, as fidelity to God's commandments invites misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and outright hostility, underscoring the need for resilience, wisdom, and spiritual discernment amidst persecution. The historical persecution of Protestants by Roman Catholicism, which nearly obliterated the Christian faith, will be surpassed when Protestantism aligns with Catholicism against the faithful. Satan has myriad strategies poised to coerce God's loyal followers into compromising their conscience. Current and future horrors should not astonish us. Those opposing God's law share the same spirit as those who persecuted Jesus, acting without remorse under the devil's influence. Reflecting on the early church's history, post-Pentecost, as documented in Acts, offers valuable insights for today's believers who will undergo similar trials. Soon, earthly riches will lose their value when a mandate prohibits trade without the beast's mark, emphasizing the urgency to spread God's final warning. The near future holds a time when trade will be impossible without conforming to the beast's mark, a precursor to a worldwide crisis, indicating the urgency for God's work to be completed before these restrictions take effect. In Satan's final assault, every earthly support for God's faithful will be severed, as adherence to God's law will lead to prohibitions on buying or selling, aiming to force compliance with worldly mandates. Imprisonment, exile, and enslavement will confront those steadfast in Sabbath observance, as satanic influence leads humanity to act with extreme cruelty when devoid of heavenly guidance. Facing persecution, believers must trust in God with childlike faith, preparing for potential martyrdom as a testament to their faith, potentially leading others to truth. The path of fidelity to God may involve imprisonment, loss of property, or even life itself in a steadfast defense of His commandments. Obedience to human laws, contravening God's commandments, will place God's people in direct conflict, facing betrayal and persecution from close relationships. The strength of martyrs is granted only when needed, ensuring divine support and courage during persecution, emphasizing reliance solely on Christ. The endurance required for the upcoming trials is rooted in a deep, personal connection with Christ, understanding the truth as it is in Him, which alone can satisfy the soul's deepest needs. Faithfulness to God may cost earthly possessions and relationships, but the joy of union with Christ offers eternal rewards, surpassing worldly loss. As opposition to Sabbath observance intensifies, relocation might become necessary for God's people to find less hostile environments, showcasing the ongoing conflict between heavenly truth and human opposition. God doesn't expect his followers to stay in places where their efforts are neutralized and their safety compromised. When facing direct threats to freedom and life, it's not just an option, but a duty to relocate to more receptive areas, where the message of salvation is welcomed and opportunities to share it are greater. The approaching times of persecution will scatter God's people across various nations. Those with a comprehensive education will find themselves better prepared and more adaptable in these new environments. As persecution intensifies, the genuine followers of Christ will recognize his guidance, rallying together to rescue the lost and welcoming back those who had drifted away. United by common challenges, internal conflicts and competitions will dissolve, focusing instead on a collective resistance against adversity. Historically, God has intervened at critical moments to counteract Satan's schemes, whether on the level of nations, families, or individuals, making his presence and protection unmistakably known, especially when his laws are nearly universally defied, and his people face extreme hardships. Although God may allow the wicked temporary victories to expose Satan's true nature as deceitful, accusatory, and destructive, this only sets the stage for a more significant, evident triumph for his faithful servants. As turmoil spreads all over the world, understanding and connecting with God is urgent and essential for everyone without delay. God's love and care for his church are boundless, allowing trials only as necessary for purification and ultimate benefit, aiming to strengthen piety and resolve to spread the gospel everywhere. Our trials and tribulations are heavenly tools for refinement, preparing us spiritually for our eternal home, emphasizing that every challenge faced is part of a larger divine plan for our growth and salvation.